The conference room was quiet, filled with some of the most respected and influential figures in the legal world. The justices, judges, and lawyers from all across the country had gathered to discuss some of the most complex legal matters of the time. Their voices echoed off the polished wooden floors as they debated, analyzed, and dissected cases that could change the course of history. It was a room of sharp minds, all focused on the intricacies of the law. Yet little did they know, the next surprise was going to come from a place they never expected. An 8-year-old girl. Lily, a shy and quiet girl, had been sitting at the back of the room, her small hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her parents had brought her along, seeing this as an opportunity to show their daughter the world of law and education. Her parents were both musicians and had been encouraging her interest in music since she could remember. But Lily, although naturally gifted with the piano, had always been someone who kept to herself. She loved to play, but she didn't like the spotlight. She preferred the comfort of her room, the solitude of the piano where no one was watching, where her music could flow freely without fear of judgment. Today, however, was different. Today she was sitting in a room full of powerful people, people whose opinions mattered, people who were constantly in the public eye. And it made her nervous. She had never played in front of such a large audience, much less in front of professionals who might critique every note, every pause. But as her parents had always taught her, she knew that if she were going to pursue her love for music, she had to learn to push through the fear. As the conference continued, Lily couldn't help but notice the heavy conversations taking place around her. The justices were deep in thought, their brows furrowed as they discussed complicated cases. They were completely engrossed in their work, unaware of the quiet child sitting in the corner, who, despite her age, had a talent that was unlike any of the professionals in the room. The event had been scheduled for an entire day, and the time had come for the attendees to take a short break. The organizers, in an attempt to lighten the atmosphere, casually mentioned that if anyone had a special talent they would like to share, now would be the time. The request was simple, and for a moment no one took it seriously. The justices exchanged looks, some chuckling at the thought of someone performing for such an esteemed crowd. But it was then that Lily's father stood up. He had been watching his daughter closely all day, sensing her nerves. He knew how talented she was, but he also understood how difficult it could be to step out of the shadows and face an audience. He turned to Lily and gave her a small nod as if saying, "You can do this." Lily's heart raced. She looked up at her father, then glanced around the room. Everyone's eyes were suddenly on her. It felt like the world had gone silent, even though the chatter from the justices and other attendees still lingered in the background. She felt a knot form in her stomach. The thought of playing in front of so many strangers, many of whom were much older than her, was terrifying. What if they didn't like her music? What if they thought she wasn't good enough? But then she thought of the piano, sitting in the corner of the room. Her fingers itched to play. Music had always been a refuge for her. Whenever she felt anxious or scared, she could find solace in the smooth, soothing sound of the piano. It was her safe place, her way of expressing herself without words. She didn't have to be perfect. She just had to play. With a deep breath, Lily stood up, her small feet moving slowly toward the grand piano. Every step felt heavier than the last, but she kept her eyes focused on the piano, trying to block out the eyes of the room. When she reached it, she hesitated for a moment before sitting down on the bench. Her hands rested lightly on the keys, unsure of where to start. The justices, noticing that a child had approached the piano, fell silent. They hadn't expected someone so young to take the stage. A few of them exchanged curious glances, but most of them simply waited, unsure of what would come next. Lily's hands moved to the keys, and she began playing softly. The opening notes were delicate, the sound soft and gentle. It was a simple melody at first, something that felt familiar to her. Her fingers danced over the keys, and gradually she found her rhythm. The nervousness she had felt moments ago began to slip away. It was as if the piano was welcoming her back, reminding her that she was home. She let the music take over, allowing the notes to flow freely from her fingers one after another. The audience, at first unsure of what to make of the performance, began to listen more intently. The sound of the piano was unlike anything they had expected. Despite Lily's young age, there was a maturity in her playing, a depth that drew them in. It was clear that she had been playing for much longer than her age would suggest. Her hands moved with confidence even though her small body seemed to shrink into the piano bench. She was lost in the music, unaware of the stunned looks on the faces of the justices. One of the justices, an elderly woman who had been involved in some of the most groundbreaking legal cases in the country, leaned in closer to hear the music better. She had never expected to hear such a performance in the middle of a legal conference, especially from someone so young. She listened closely, noticing the way Lily's fingers seemed to caress the keys as though she had a special connection to the piano. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation. Lily's playing was smooth, polished, and professional. As Lily continued, the room fell into a deeper silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The justices who had spent their careers making important decisions and analyzing complex legal arguments were now completely captivated by the music. The young girl's talent had rendered them speechless. It wasn't just that she was playing well. It was that she was playing like someone who had lived and breathed music for years, someone whose soul seemed intertwined with the piano itself. Lily didn't notice the impact she was having on the room. She had always played for herself, never for the approval of others. But today, in front of this crowd of esteemed individuals, something shifted. She felt a sense of freedom in her playing, as if the music had unlocked a part of her she hadn't known was there. It was as if, in that moment, she was no longer just a child in the corner of the room. She was a musician, a creator of something beautiful. As she reached the end of her piece, the last note echoed softly in the room. The silence that followed was palpable. It was as though time itself had stopped, allowing the music to linger in the air. And then slowly the justices began to clap. At first it was hesitant, a few polite claps, unsure of what had just occurred. But as the realization of what they had just witnessed settled in, the applause grew louder. The room erupted into a standing ovation, and for the first time that day, the justices were speechless in a way they had never been before. Lily's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she stood up, unsure of how to react to the praise. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight. But as the applause continued, her father smiled from the back of the room, pride shining in his eyes. He had known from the very beginning that Lily was special, but even he hadn't expected such an extraordinary response. As the applause slowly died down, Lily felt a mixture of emotions. Her heart was racing and she could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. She had never expected such a reaction. The justices, who were known for their composed and measured demeanor, had stood up and clapped for her. Their warm expressions and genuine smiles were a far cry from the serious, impersonal faces she had imagined when she first walked into the room. She glanced up at her parents, who were beaming with pride. Her father's eyes sparkled, his smile wide as he waved at her from the back of the room. Lily's mother was clapping as well, her hands a blur of movement as she cheered for her daughter. It was a moment Lily would never forget, a moment where the world, or at least the room full of important, influential people, recognized her for something she had always kept private. Lily's mind was spinning, and her thoughts raced as she stood there trying to process what had just happened. She was used to playing in the privacy of her own home, in the quiet of her room where no one was watching. But here, in front of these people, these adults who were used to solving problems and making decisions that shaped the world, she had done something unexpected. She had played a piece of music that made them stop everything and listen. She had reached them in a way that words never could. As the clapping faded away, one of the justices, a man with silver hair and glasses, approached her. His calm demeanor and steady voice immediately put Lily at ease. "You have an incredible gift, young lady," he said, his tone warm but serious. "I've been listening to musicians for years, but I've never heard someone so young play with such skill and passion. It's rare to find that kind of raw talent." Lily swallowed, feeling a little overwhelmed by his words. She wasn't used to being praised in such a formal way, but it felt good to hear that what she had done mattered. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Her fingers, which had been so sure on the piano keys just moments ago, now felt a little shaky as she folded them in front of her. The justice smiled, noticing her discomfort. "You should be proud of yourself. Not many people can do what you just did, especially at your age." Lily nodded but remained silent, still processing everything that had just happened. She could hear the murmurs of conversation starting to fill the room as the justices and the other attendees gathered around her, each one eager to ask her questions about her music. how she had learned and what inspired her to play. Her mother, sensing that Lily might feel overwhelmed, stepped in and gently placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Why don't we give her a moment?" she suggested, offering a kind smile to the group. The justices nodded in understanding, giving Lily some space. It was then that Lily realized just how many people had been watching her, how many important people had been so captivated by her music. It was a strange feeling, one that she wasn't sure how to handle. She had always preferred to play alone, in the quiet of her room, where the only thing that mattered was the music and the emotions it carried. Her parents guided her gently away from the crowd, leading her to a quiet corner of the room where she could breathe. Lily's heart was still racing, but as she sat down and looked around at the people who had just applauded her, she couldn't help but smile. "I didn't expect that," she admitted, her voice still tinged with disbelief. Her mother laughed softly. "I don't think anyone did. But you did so well, Lily. You've got a gift, sweetheart. We always knew you had it in you." Lily nodded slowly, feeling a quiet pride settle in her chest. It had been scary to perform in front of so many people, but now that it was over, she couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. She had done it. She had faced her fears and played for an audience. And not just any audience, but a room full of some of the most powerful figures in the country. And they had been moved by her music. Her father knelt down beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You were amazing, Lily. I'm so proud of you," he said, his voice full of affection. Lily smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Her parents had always been supportive of her passion for music, but today, they seemed especially proud. It meant the world to her. They had always encouraged her to follow her heart, but it had been her own journey to embrace the piano and the joy it brought her. Today, it felt like everything had come together. As the buzz of conversation continued around the room, Lily began to feel the weight of the attention she had received. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, and while it felt nice to be recognized, it also felt a little overwhelming. Her thoughts drifted back to the music. The way it had felt when her fingers had touched the keys and the notes had flowed from her hands without hesitation. In that moment, she had been completely lost in the music, and the world around her had faded away. It was one of the things she loved most about playing the piano, the way it allowed her to express herself without words. "Do you think I'll ever get to perform like that again?" she asked her mother, her voice barely audible. Her mother smiled, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. "I think the world will want to hear more from you, Lily. You have something special. But just remember, performing isn't the only thing that matters. Music is about feeling it, enjoying it, and letting it bring you joy. That's what's most important." Lily nodded, taking in her mother's words. She understood what she meant. Music was a part of her soul, something she couldn't separate from who she was. It wasn't just about the performance or the applause. It was about how it made her feel, how it made others feel. As the crowd slowly began to thin out, the justices and other attendees returned to their conversations, leaving Lily and her parents in a quiet corner of the room. The day had been long, but it had also been unforgettable. Lily had faced her fear, stepped into the spotlight, and played a piece of music that would stay with everyone who heard it. Later that evening, as they made their way home, Lily couldn't stop thinking about the performance. She had never imagined that something as simple as playing the piano could have such an impact. She had played because it was what she loved to do, but today, it had been more than just a personal passion. It had been a way to connect with others, to show them the beauty she found in music. For Lily, this was only the beginning. The applause, the attention, it didn't matter as much as the feeling of playing, of sharing her music with the world. She realized that music was not something to be kept hidden in the corner of her room. It was something to be shared, something to be celebrated. And she was ready to share it no matter where it took her. The next few days felt like a whirlwind for Lily. After her unexpected performance at the conference, she couldn't shake the feeling of awe and excitement that had settled over her. It wasn't just the applause that had stayed with her, but the look in the justices' eyes, the way they had truly listened to her music. It was as if they had been moved, not by the technical precision of the notes, but by something deeper, something that words could never fully capture. Her parents, still glowing with pride, had been supportive as ever. They talked about her performance nonstop, sharing the story with family and friends. To them, it was another beautiful moment in their daughter's musical journey. But for Lily, it was a defining moment. She had never imagined that playing the piano could have such an impact on others, especially in such a formal setting. But the reality of the situation was slowly beginning to sink in. Lily had always enjoyed playing for herself. It was a personal escape, a way to let her emotions flow without speaking a word. But now people were starting to notice her talent. People she had never met, people who were used to seeing the best of the best, had seen her and heard her play. And the world was reacting in a way she hadn't expected. At school, the news had spread quickly. Her classmates had been buzzing with excitement ever since they heard about the performance. Some were amazed by her skill, while others had trouble believing she was only 8 years old. They started asking her questions about the piano, how long she had been playing, what kind of music she liked, and how she learned to play so well. The attention felt overwhelming, and Lily wasn't sure how to handle it. For the first time in her life, she felt a sense of responsibility attached to her gift. It wasn't just about playing anymore. It was about the expectations that people had of her now. She had always played for herself, but now others were expecting her to play for them. One afternoon, as she sat in the living room, her fingers gently brushing across the keys of the piano, her father came in, a proud smile on his face. "You know, Lily," he said, "I've been talking to some people about your performance. There's a lot of interest in you." Lily looked up, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean? What kind of interest?" Her father sat down beside her, his voice filled with excitement. "Well, there are people who want to hear more from you. Some of the justices were so impressed with your talent that they've suggested you perform at some of their events. People are asking about you, Lily." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She had never considered the idea of performing in front of such large crowds again. The first time had been a one-time event, something spontaneous. But now people were actually asking for more. She wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of attention. "I don't know if I can do it, Dad," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I mess up? What if they don't like my music?" Her father smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Lily, you can't worry about what other people think. You have a gift, a talent that's unique to you. It's not about impressing anyone, it's about sharing something beautiful. If you play from the heart, that's all that matters." Lily nodded, but a small knot remained in her stomach. She loved the idea of sharing her music, but the thought of performing again filled her with nervousness. The conference had been one thing. She had played for a group of adults, many of whom were more focused on their own discussions than on her. But performing for a large audience was another matter entirely. What if she made a mistake? What if she froze up? That evening, as she sat by the window in her room, looking out at the quiet street, her thoughts wandered back to the piano. She had always felt a special connection to it, something that was hard to explain. It was as if the piano understood her, knew how to express her feelings when she couldn't find the right words. She loved the feeling of the keys under her fingers, the way each note seemed to tell a story. Music was her escape, her way of sharing her emotions with the world without ever saying a word. But now, that escape was turning into something else, a responsibility. People were starting to expect more from her. They wanted her to play, to perform, to be a piano prodigy. The pressure was starting to weigh on her, and she wasn't sure how to handle it. The next day, Lily's parents received an official invitation for her to perform at a charity event, hosted by one of the justices she had played for. The event was going to be attended by some of the most influential people in the country, business leaders, politicians, and philanthropists. It was a prestigious event, and the invitation was a big deal. Her father looked at her with excitement, waiting for her response. Lily, however, wasn't sure what to say. The thought of performing at such a large event filled her with both excitement and fear. She had always loved playing the piano, but the idea of being in front of so many people made her stomach turn. What if she made a mistake? What if she forgot the notes? What if she couldn't live up to the expectations? Her mother, sensing her hesitation, knelt down beside her. "Sweetheart, you don't have to do this if you're not ready. It's okay to say no. We want you to do what makes you happy." Lily looked at the invitation in her hands. She knew her parents wanted what was best for her, but part of her felt that she had to do this. This was a big opportunity, and turning it down felt like giving up. But was she ready? She wasn't sure. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Lily sat by the piano once more. Her fingers rested gently on the keys as she played a simple melody, something that always brought her comfort. She thought about the event, about the people who would be watching her. But as she played, something inside her began to calm. The piano, as it always had, soothed her nerves. It reminded her of the reasons she started playing in the first place. She didn't need to impress anyone. She didn't need to be perfect. All she had to do was play from the heart. As the days passed, Lily found herself caught between excitement and uncertainty. She had agreed to perform at the charity event, despite her initial reservations. Deep down, she knew it was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. An opportunity to share her passion for music with a larger audience, a chance to show the world what she had to offer. But at the same time, the pressure weighed heavily on her young shoulders. The thought of playing in front of so many influential people was both thrilling and terrifying. Lily's parents, of course, were supportive. They reassured her every step of the way, reminding her that this was about sharing her love for music, not about meeting anyone's expectations. They knew their daughter well enough to understand that at her core, she needed to feel comfortable and in control when she played. They made sure to give her the space she needed, never pushing her too hard but always encouraging her to pursue her dreams. The days leading up to the event felt like a blur. Lily practiced every day, her fingers moving more confidently over the keys with each passing hour. Her nervousness began to fade as she settled into a routine of practice and preparation. She was no longer consumed by the fear of making a mistake. Instead, she found herself focusing on the music itself, the beauty of the notes, the way they came together to tell a story. As long as she played from the heart, she knew she would be okay. On the day of the charity event, Lily woke up early, the nerves creeping back into her stomach as she prepared for the performance. She had spent the morning with her parents, getting dressed and going over the final details. They made sure she felt comfortable and ready, but there was no denying the weight of the occasion. It was a big deal, and Lily couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. Her father, noticing her unease, knelt down beside her and smiled. "Remember, sweetheart, you're not performing for anyone but yourself. You're doing this because you love music. Don't worry about anyone else." Lily nodded, taking a deep breath. "I know, Dad, but what if I mess up?" "You won't," he replied confidently. "You've been practicing hard. Just trust yourself." Lily smiled, grateful for her father's words of encouragement. With his support, she felt a little more at ease. Still, as they drove to the event, her thoughts began to race again. What if something went wrong? What if she forgot the notes? What if she felt too nervous to play at all? When they arrived at the venue, Lily's heart skipped a beat. The event was being held at a grand hall, a space far larger than anything she had ever performed in before. The polished floors and high ceilings made the place feel even more imposing. As they walked through the grand entrance, Lily could see a sea of people, dressed in elegant clothes, chatting and laughing, their eyes occasionally drifting toward her as she passed by. It was a world that felt so far removed from the quiet comfort of her home, where she had always felt in control. Her parents led her to the backstage area, where a team of event coordinators was already making final preparations. They greeted her warmly and assured her that everything was ready for her performance. Lily's nerves began to settle as she realized how much care had gone into making sure everything was perfect. The stage was set, the piano was tuned, and all that was left to do was play. As she waited in the wings, Lily's parents stayed by her side, offering words of encouragement whenever she needed them. Her mother rubbed her back gently, her voice soft and reassuring. "You've got this, Lily. Just remember, it's about the music, not about the crowd." Lily took another deep breath and nodded. She wasn't just playing for the crowd. She was playing for herself, for the love of music that had always been her refuge. The nerves still lingered, but the excitement began to build as she realized that this was the moment she had worked toward. When it was finally her turn, Lily walked out onto the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. The audience, a sea of faces, was quiet, waiting for her to begin. She felt a flutter of anxiety, but she remembered her father's words. "You're not performing for anyone but yourself." Slowly, she made her way to the grand piano and sat down, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. For a moment, everything felt surreal. The bright lights overhead seemed to blur as she focused on the piano in front of her. The noise of the crowd faded into the background, and all that was left was the music. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the calm of the piano wash over her. When she opened them again, she began to play. The first notes were gentle, hesitant at first, but as she settled into the rhythm, The music began to flow more freely. She let the melody take over, her fingers moving confidently across the keys. The nerves faded with each note, and soon, she was completely immersed in the music. She could feel the emotion in every chord, the way the music spoke to her and through her. It was as if she had become one with the piano, her soul merging with the notes that filled the room. As she played, Lily could hear the occasional gasp from the audience. The power of her music was undeniable, and for a moment she felt a sense of connection with everyone in the room. It wasn't just about the performance, it was about the way the music brought them all together, creating a shared experience that transcended words. The longer she played, the more confident she became. Each note felt like a step closer to her true self, each chord a reminder of why she loved music in the first place. The room was silent save for the sound of her playing. It was as if the audience had been drawn into her world, captivated by the beauty of the music she was creating. When she reached the final notes, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had done it. She had faced her fear and played with everything she had. The music had spoken for her, and she had let it flow freely. As the last note rang out and faded into the silence, Lily slowly lifted her hands from the keys, her heart still racing. The audience was silent for a moment, as if they were waiting for something. Then, without warning, the room erupted into applause. The sound was deafening, a wave of appreciation that washed over her. Lily blinked in surprise, not quite sure how to process the response. It was more than she had ever imagined. Her parents, standing in the back of the room, were beaming with pride. Her father's eyes were filled with tears as he clapped for her, his heart swelling with pride. Lily could hear the cheers and applause from the audience, but she couldn't quite comprehend it. All she could feel was the music, still lingering in her mind. As the applause continued, Lily took a deep breath and stood up, bowing slightly in gratitude. She felt a sense of accomplishment, but more than anything, she felt a deep sense of peace. She had shared her love of music with the world, and in return the world had embraced her. It wasn't about the applause or the recognition. It was about the connection she had made through the music. When Lily left the stage, her parents rushed to her side, their faces filled with pride. "You were incredible," her father said, his voice thick with emotion. Lily smiled, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her heart. "I did it," she whispered, still in awe of what she had just accomplished. "You did more than just play, sweetheart," her mother said, her voice full of warmth. "You shared something beautiful." As Lily left the stage, the sound of applause continued to echo in her ears. She had never experienced anything like it before, and it took a moment for the sensation to sink in. It wasn't just the clapping. It was the genuine appreciation and admiration that filled the room. The same audience that had entered the event with high expectations was now completely captivated by her music. Her parents were waiting for her at the side of the stage, their faces glowing with pride. They had always known Lily had talent, but seeing her perform like that in front of so many people filled them with a sense of wonder. They had always supported her, but today they saw something more, something extraordinary. Lily walked toward them slowly, her feet feeling heavier with each step. The nerves that had once consumed her were now replaced by a wave of relief, but also a sense of exhaustion. Performing, especially in front of so many people, took everything out of her. Yet there was a quiet joy that rested in her chest. She had done it. She had shared her passion, and the world had listened. "You were amazing," her mother said softly, pulling her into a warm embrace. "I'm so proud of you, Lily." Lily smiled, still feeling overwhelmed by the experience. "I didn't think I could do it," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Her father, his voice filled with pride, knelt down beside her. "You were brilliant, sweetheart. You played with so much heart. That's what made it so special." Lily looked up at them, her heart swelling with emotion. The words of praise felt good, but it was the support of her parents that meant the most. They had always been there for her, even when she was just a little girl learning how to play. And now they were here with her, witnessing her share that gift with the world. As they made their way to the reception area, Lily couldn't help but notice the crowd of people gathering around her. There were journalists, reporters, and event organizers, all eager to speak with her, to learn more about the young piano prodigy who had just stunned the entire room. Lily had never imagined that something as simple as playing the piano could attract this much attention. Her parents, sensing her hesitation, gently guided her toward a quieter corner of the room. They had always taught her to stay humble, to focus on the music and not the fame that could come with it. And though the attention was flattering, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that the spotlight was a little too much for her. As the crowd buzzed around her, Lily found herself feeling a little out of place. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, and while it was nice to be recognized for her talent, it also felt a little overwhelming. She had always played for the love of the music, not for the applause or the accolades. Her mother, sensing her discomfort, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Lily," she said with a reassuring smile. "Just take a deep breath. You've earned this moment. Enjoy it." Lily nodded, trying to calm the fluttering in her chest. She had always loved playing for herself, finding solace in the quiet moments spent with the piano. But today it felt like the whole world was watching. The idea of performing again, of stepping back into the spotlight, made her stomach twist with nerves. What if she couldn't live up to their expectations? What if she made a mistake? But then she remembered something her father had told her earlier. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about sharing your love for music. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that it wasn't the applause that mattered. It was the music itself. The joy it brought her. The way it allowed her to express herself without words. That was the true gift. As the event continued, Lily found herself pulled in different directions. There were more conversations, more people asking questions about her music, her future, and what inspired her to play. It was flattering in a way, but also a little exhausting. She had always preferred to let her music speak for itself, not to explain it to others. Eventually, as the evening began to wind down, the buzz of conversation started to fade. The crowd began to disperse, and Lily felt a sense of relief wash over her. It had been an incredible experience, one that she would never forget, but now, she just wanted to return to the simplicity of her life, the quiet comfort of her room, the soft touch of the piano keys beneath her fingers. Her parents, sensing her desire to retreat, offered her a quiet smile. "Let's go home," her father said, his voice gentle. "You've earned some rest." As they made their way out of the venue, Lily felt a sense of calm settle over her. The world outside felt so different from the one she had just left behind. The bright lights, the applause, the interviews, it all seemed like a distant memory now. She was grateful for the experience, but it wasn't something she craved. She didn't need the spotlight. She needed the music. That night, after they returned home, Lily sat down at the piano once again. The room was quiet, and the only sound was the soft hum of the keys as her fingers moved across them. The familiar comfort of her own space, the warmth of her family nearby. It all felt like home. Here in this space, she could be herself. No expectations, no pressure, just the music. As she played, her mind wandered back to the events of the day, the people she had met, the applause, the interviews. It had all been so surreal, so unlike anything she had ever imagined. But through it all, the music had remained constant. It had been her anchor, the one thing that kept her grounded when everything else seemed to be spinning around her. She played for hours that night, lost in the rhythm and the melody. With every note, she felt more at peace, more connected to herself. She realized that no matter where her music took her, it was the joy of playing that mattered most. The rest, the applause, the recognition, was just a bonus. Her parents watched her from the doorway, content to let her have this moment of solitude. They knew that no matter what the future held, Lily's love for music would always be her guiding light. And they would be there, supporting her every step of the way. As the weeks passed, life slowly returned to a sense of normality for Lily. The charity event and her unforgettable performance in front of the influential audience had come and gone, but its impact lingered in the air. Lily's parents were careful not to let the attention overwhelm her, understanding that her love for music was what truly mattered. The excitement of the event had died down, but the memories of the applause, the interviews, and the looks of admiration from the audience still felt vivid in her mind. The quiet moments in her room, however, were where Lily felt most at home. It was here, in her own little corner of the world, that she could simply be herself, away from the pressures of the world. The sound of the piano filled the room, comforting her, grounding her, and reminding her of the peace that music brought. Yet as she sat down to play one afternoon, a thought began to bubble up inside her. Was she ready for what came next? The events of the charity performance had opened up a new world for Lily. People were starting to take notice of her talent, and with that came new opportunities, some exciting, some intimidating. Lily's parents had received more offers for performances and appearances, but they were being careful not to push her too hard. Her mother often reminded her, "You don't have to do everything. You only need to do what makes you happy." But Lily wasn't sure anymore. She wanted to share her music, but did she want to share it with the world in the way that was being asked of her? The pressure was starting to feel real. For the first time, she began to question whether she was truly ready to handle everything that came with being in the spotlight. One evening, as she played a soft, flowing piece, Lily's mind drifted to the letter she had recently received. It was an invitation for her to perform at a renowned international music festival. The offer was incredibly prestigious, and the thought of performing on such a large stage was both exciting and terrifying. It was a chance to showcase her talent to a global audience, but it also meant that her life would change forever. She knew it would take her to places she had never been, and that thought made her both thrilled and nervous. She had always played for the love of music, but now it seemed that music was pulling her into a world she wasn't sure she was prepared for. The expectations were growing, and Lily wasn't sure how to handle them. What if she couldn't live up to the standards? What if she failed in front of so many people? Lily sat quietly at the piano, her fingers frozen above the keys. The doubts crept in, and she found herself paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake, of disappointing others. It felt like she was walking a tightrope, and with every step the pressure mounted. What if, in trying to meet everyone's expectations, she lost the joy she found in simply playing for herself? Her father, sensing the unease that had settled in her heart, walked into the room. "I saw you were deep in thought," he said, taking a seat beside her. "What's on your mind, Lily?" Lily hesitated before speaking. She didn't want to let her fears take over, but she couldn't keep them inside any longer. "I've been thinking about the offer for the music festival," she began, her voice uncertain. "It's such a big opportunity, but I don't know if I'm ready for it. What if I mess up? What if they're disappointed?" Her father looked at her with understanding, his eyes soft but steady. "Lily, you've always had a gift for music. But remember, it's not about what others expect from you. It's about how you feel when you play. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Just play the way you always have, and everything else will follow." Lily looked down at the piano, taking in her father's words. It was true. She had always played because it made her feel good, because it allowed her to express what words couldn't. But as her audience grew larger, so did the expectations. She wasn't sure if she could keep the balance between sharing her music with the world and staying true to herself. "I just don't want to lose the joy of playing, Dad," Lily confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Her father smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You won't. The joy is always there as long as you remember why you started. Music has always been about you and the piano, not about what others think. As long as you hold on to that, the joy will never leave." Lily nodded, a sense of calm washing over her. Maybe she didn't need to have all the answers right away. Maybe she just needed to trust herself, to trust the music, and to take things one step at a time. It was okay to be unsure. It was okay to take things slowly. As the days went by, Lily continued to practice, her confidence returning with each note she played. She focused less on the expectations placed upon her and more on the joy of playing. The music was hers, and that was all that mattered. Whether she performed for an audience of 10 or 10,000, the joy would always be the same. When the day arrived for her to make the final decision about the music festival, Lily sat down with her parents, her heart filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. They talked about the offer, weighing the pros and cons, but in the end, it was Lily who had to make the final choice. "I'm ready," Lily said, her voice steady but her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "I'm going to do it. But I'm going to do it on my terms. I'm not going to let the pressure change why I play." Her parents exchanged proud smiles. "We're so proud of you, Lily," her mother said, her voice filled with warmth. And so, with a newfound sense of purpose, Lily accepted the invitation to perform at the music festival. She wasn't doing it for the recognition or the applause. She was doing it because music had always been her escape, her way of speaking when words couldn't capture the full depth of her emotions. And now she was ready to share that gift with the world. not to impress anyone, but simply to share the beauty of music as she always had. Lily had made her decision, and with it came a renewed sense of focus. She was going to perform at the music festival, not because she felt obligated, but because she wanted to. Her love for music had always been a source of peace and comfort, and now she was ready to share that part of herself with a wider audience. But as the festival approached, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the responsibility she had placed on her shoulders. The performance was only a few days away, and the anticipation was starting to build. The days leading up to the festival were a blur of rehearsals, adjustments, and nerves. Lily continued to practice at home, losing herself in the piano just as she had done before the event that had started it all. But this time things were different. She could feel the world beginning to notice her, and with that came the pressure to live up to the expectations that were growing every day. It was hard not to feel overwhelmed. Everywhere she went, people were asking about her upcoming performance, congratulating her on the success of the previous one, and talking about how excited they were to see her on the stage again. Her parents remained by her side, offering their constant support and reassurance. They encouraged her to stay grounded, to remember the reason she started playing in the first place. Music had always been her escape, her way of expressing emotions that words could never quite capture. They reminded her that no matter how big the event, it was still just her and the piano. That was the magic, how the music could create a bridge between her soul and the hearts of others. Still, the closer the event got, the more the pressure mounted. The festival was an international event, and Lily knew that the eyes of the world would be on her. She had heard stories of other young musicians who had made it big, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of fame. She loved playing, but what would happen after the performance? What would her life be like if everything changed? In the quiet of her room, Lily often found herself lost in thought. Would she be able to handle the attention, the interviews, the constant spotlight? Would she be able to remain the same Lily who loved playing for herself? Or would everything become about meeting expectations? The thought of it made her heart race. Her parents, sensing her unease, sat down with her one evening to have a heart-to-heart conversation. They could see how much the upcoming performance was weighing on her, and they wanted to make sure she knew that no matter what happened, they would be there for her. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready, Lily," her father said, his voice calm but filled with concern. "If the pressure is too much, we can find another way. This is about your happiness, not anyone else's expectations." Lily looked at her parents, her heart filled with gratitude. They had always been there for her, always supported her decisions, and always respected her feelings. It was in these moments, when everything felt uncertain, that she realized just how lucky she was to have them by her side. "I want to do it," she replied softly, her voice steady. "But I'm scared. What if I can't do it again? What if I disappoint everyone?" Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder, her eyes filled with warmth and love. "Lily, you don't have to do anything for anyone but yourself. You're already amazing, and you've already shared your gift with the world. Whether you're on stage at a festival or playing in your room, you're still the same person, and your music is still just as beautiful." Lily nodded slowly, absorbing her mother's words. The pressure, the expectations, they were all things she had created in her mind. In reality, no one was asking her to be anyone but herself. She didn't need to prove anything. She just needed to play the music, and the rest would fall into place. It was about connecting with the piano, just as she had always done. The night before the festival, Lily sat at the piano in the quiet of her room. She closed her eyes and let her fingers glide over the keys. She didn't need to worry about the audience or the critics. She didn't need to worry about whether she would play perfectly. All that mattered was the music. As her fingers danced across the keys, a sense of calm washed over her. The familiar sound of the piano was like a friend she could always rely on. The music was hers, and in that moment, she knew that was all that mattered. The next day, Lily and her parents arrived at the festival venue. The grand hall was much larger than she had imagined, and the stage seemed to stretch out before her in a way that made her feel small. The lights were bright, and the air was thick with anticipation. Lily's heart skipped a beat as she looked around, taking in the sheer magnitude of the event. The place was buzzing with activity, and she could sense the energy in the air. People were rushing around making final preparations. And in the midst of it all, Lily felt like a small fish in a vast ocean. But as she stood backstage, waiting for her turn to perform, a feeling of peace began to settle in. She was here for one reason, to share her music. She was here to do what she loved, and that was enough. The crowd, the cameras, the attention, they could all fade away. All she needed to do was play. That was her gift. That was her truth. When it was finally her time to take the stage, Lily felt a surge of nervous energy. But it was different now. The anxiety that had once consumed her had transformed into something else, something powerful. It was the excitement of knowing that this moment was hers to embrace. It was the thrill of being able to share her passion with a room full of people, and it was the quiet confidence that she was ready. As she walked onto the stage, the crowd fell silent. The bright lights above made it difficult to see the faces of the audience, but she could feel their presence. She could feel their anticipation. For a moment, the nerves crept in again, but then she remembered her parents' words. Just play for yourself. Lily took a deep breath and sat down at the piano. She let her fingers rest gently on the keys, and for a brief moment, everything else faded away. The sound of the piano filled the room, and she lost herself in the music. Each note felt like a release, a chance to express everything she had been holding inside. The music flowed from her heart, and she could feel the audience drawn into the rhythm, the melody, the story she was telling without words. The performance was more than just a display of skill. It was a connection, a shared experience between Lily and the audience, a bridge built on the language of music. And for that brief moment as she played, Lily knew that nothing else mattered. This was her gift, her passion, and she was giving it freely to the world.